Story 1. Nobody really cares about my problems. They can't help me. They might see that as a weakness, and I don't want to ruin the vibe or bother them. Story 2. Because it is easier to say you are fine than to explain what is really going on, especially when you are tired, do not want to burden anyone, or know they probably will not understand anyway. Story 3. Because I know some people do not really want to know how I am or do not have the time to listen, I will share my true feelings if I know they have 10 to 20 minutes to spare. However, if you just pass by on the street and ask me how I am, I cannot simply say not good and keep walking, nor do either of us have the time to discuss details. Story 4. I am a single parent without a support system. I truly appreciate that people suggest options such as babysitters or seeing a psychologist. I already utilize those resources. Often, people ask, what can I do to help? While their intentions are kind, their offers often create more work for me by requiring delegation. Unfortunately, it is easier to handle things on my own, so I remain silent. Story 5. Avoid getting judged. When I say I am struggling, I notice that people lose interest in talking. Story 6. This universal issue arises when people don't truly care and perceive you more negatively if you express that you are not fine. It often seems that speaking the truth doesn't matter, as no one shows concern about your struggles. Humanity often appears to be fundamentally selfish. Story 7. Because it is not appropriate to share your trauma with someone who is just making small talk. Nobody wants to hear that unless they are genuinely inquiring about it. Story 8. I wear a mask to navigate social situations. When I need to consider my genuine feelings, it becomes more challenging to maintain that mask. If I am with someone close to me who has the emotional capacity to understand, then maybe I can remove the mask. However, for most people, it is unnecessary for them to know. Sharing my feelings with them would only complicate my life. Story 9. Because I don't want people to know that I'm not fine, they worry. They think they're helping by worrying about me, talking to me, and comforting me, but they're not helping. I just want to be alone right now, without someone comforting me. Story 10. As a millennial man, people assume you need to fix your problems yourself. Right now, I'm in a dark place. I am broke, in physical pain, already struggling with mental illness, and feeling abandoned by friends and family. I have realized that people tend to disappear easily. I classify them into 4 categories. A male friend who thinks I'm lame for complaining, an artist or musician male friend who understands and offers good advice, a rigid female friend who thinks I am pathetic, and a female friend who has empathy because she sees me as someone who needs help. Story 11. Because I am a private person, it is nobody's business. I am polite, but I have no interest in sharing. Additionally, people are only asking to sound polite, not to receive a genuine answer. Story 12. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to express myself or be heard. My ex always told me to be quiet because I am female and did not know what I was talking about. I had to take care of my mother and deal with everything alone as a child and during my abusive relationship, so it has become a habit. Yes, I am working on changing that, but it is difficult. Story 13. Because it is not your issue to resolve, nor am I seeking assistance. People are happier when they hear that others are fine. Then they can move on to what they actually want to discuss. Story 14. Not everyone is someone to confide in, and most people ask for acknowledgement while walking away, indicating that they only wanted a brief response. Story 15. I work in a helping profession, so I understand how damaging it can be to internalize feelings and hide them out of fear of seeming like a burden. If someone asks if I am okay, and it is clear that I am wearing my emotions on my face, I will let them know I am feeling a bit down or frustrated. The people who usually ask me this are also helping professionals I work with or am friends with, creating a shared understanding and empathy. We mutually check in on each other. At home, I am also very open about my feelings when something is bothering me. Story 16. I prefer to keep my personal life private. In my opinion, it is nobody's business how I am doing. I am a Scorpio, so I understand that most people may not share this sentiment. Story 17. No one else really cares, so why talk about it? They are either listening to distract from their own stress or to gather the story about yours to share. Story 18. All the things in my life that make me feel not fine are not fixable by others, and I don't want to drag the mood down. I know that what we say can be carried by others for a long time. I would hate to make someone worry about me when there is nothing that can be done. Story 19. Because people often give me insincere motivational lines when I tell them it doesn't work at all and they never listen, I stopped expressing how I felt to others. Since I'm uncomfortable, I know nobody is going to help me anyway. Now, I spend my days with a miserable facade. Story 20. No one cares how I am, and when I try to tell them, they say, "You did a great job," so it feels like a waste of time. Story 21. Because most people don't really care, and they don't want to hear about my problems. They just want to hear, "I'm good, and you?" Story 22. The people I know do not actually care or try to understand my fundamental problems. I do not trust them with more than that or really expect some of the things I experience to be easily understood at all by most people. Story 23. Unless someone really asks you and is making a space for you to talk, then sure. But if it's the general, "Hey, how are you?" I think everyone understands it's pretty much considered common courtesy or just a greeting at this point. Story 24. 95% of the time, people are indifferent to your problems unless those problems affect them directly. Story 25. I lack the mental energy to discuss this, and I don't think talking about it with this person will be helpful. Story 26. Many people want to solve your problems. I rarely desire that. I tend to know what my problems are and what I can and cannot do about them. Story 27. People often do not truly care how you are doing. It's merely a courtesy to ask. If you share a problem with someone, they typically respond by stating their own problems are worse, which can make you feel ashamed for complaining. So, the common reply becomes, "I'm fine." Story 28. Whenever I speak the truth, I am scolded for it. How dare I be anything but happy when everyone else is happy, or when my mom is sad, as she believes she is the center of the universe. Story 29. What is an example of a phatic phrase? An example is a simple, basic exchange between two acquaintances in a non-formal environment. Speaker 1. What's up? In UK English, this more commonly means, is there something wrong? Speaker 2. Hey, how's it going? In US English, hey is equivalent to hi or hello. Story 30. There are two types of being not fine, and some are just not worth worrying others over. I can be not fine because my stomach hurts, because I'm sleep deprived, hungry, or sick, or because someone I like died. This is the kind of not fine that I think one should share. I can also be not fine because I just woke up in a bad mood with no clear reason, or because someone online told me that I'm not needed here and that he can't wait to harm others. This is the kind of not fine that is better off kept to myself. Story 31. Because I haven't got the time to go into it. I have tried before, but there is no way to fix it. Asking if I'm fine is normally just a greeting rather than a genuine question. Story 32. 80% of people who ask are being polite and do not really want to have a conversation about someone else's feelings. How are you? Me. Are you being polite? Or do you really want to know? It also depends on who is asking. Story 33. I have my people who I can talk to, and they listen and are supportive. For everyone else, I'm doing well. Story 34. Because I've learned that people often do not mean what they say when they ask about personal matters. They typically want to discuss surface-level, everyday topics rather than deeper issues. I once told my boss that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. She asked 2 questions, and then spent the next 20 minutes discussing her own problems. Story 35. Because the reality is that no one cares about my problems. Strangers, friends, co-workers. Everyone has their own issues they are dealing with and does not want to burden others. You learn in life that everyone is looking out for themselves. Story 36. It's easier with that default answer. It also doesn't have any follow-up questions. That's how I feel. Story 37. I don't often smile and say no if someone asks if I'm doing well. Then I carry on. I'm too lazy to lie to people. Story 38. Some problems have no conclusions or solutions. You may feel mad, upset, or sad, and sometimes you just have to wait it out. In these moments, answering a question with "no, I'm not fine" can open the door to a conversation. People are generally kind and want to help in any way they can. But you're tired. There is no solution anyway. You're emotional. A 5 to 10-minute conversation about it might only leave you feeling more exhausted. Why not just say, "I'm fine" instead? Story 39. I see talking as a waste of my time since no one can see and feel exactly the way I do, so there is no point in talking. Additionally, I am not fine all the time, and I cannot always express that I am not fine. Story 40. Most people don't care. I have created a persona that I am always positive, and people appreciate that. Being completely honest about my deep existential dread would damage the relationships that support me. Additionally, many would not understand why I am not fine, as most tend to stay within their own circles and avoid extreme groups. Story 41. Either they weren't asking because they genuinely wanted to know, or I simply don't want to discuss it. Story 42. Asking someone how they are is just a generic pleasantry. People typically do not want to hear all the problems someone has. It feels strange to go into lengthy detail with an answer unless it is with a close friend or family member. Story 43. Because it would be awkward to say "not good" in passing, I have a theory that most people do not really care for the real answer when they ask that question. Story 44. People often seek solutions instead of comfort when discussing their problems, which is not what most people want when they vent, unless they explicitly ask for advice. Whenever I talk about what's bothering me, all I receive in return is advice on how to fix it. This is just frustrating and makes me want to stop talking altogether. I understand that people have good intentions, but this is not always the best way to help someone. Story 45. Sometimes people try to help, often making things worse and then becoming angry at me when they cannot manage their own feelings of helplessness. There have been many such instances. Story 46. I tend to be very detailed in my explanations, so others can understand my perspective and fully grasp my situation. Story 47. Because no one wants to hear my issues. They don't want to get bogged down by my depression, and I don't blame them. Who wants someone who is always uncontrollably sad and moody due to bipolar disorder? Story 48. It's a formality. Random passersby want to let you know they've seen you, but no one has the time to unravel each other's traumas and problems. If you answer, "I'm not," and they don't continue the conversation, it no longer signals that they've seen you, but does the opposite. There is a time and place for everything, and performative niceties aren't the time for a therapy session. Story 49. All the time, people. Strangers don't need to know how I am really feeling. That would just bring the mood down. I have been battling depression on and off for the past 5 years. Story 50. I don't think anyone cares about my problems or wants to hear me complain. It's just easier to say I am fine. Story 51. Seeing this question, the first thing I think is whether this person truly cares or is simply going through the motions of being a good person. Most of my life, I have been told my feelings do not matter and that I am not trying hard enough to fix things on my own. Combined with an emotionally abusive childhood, I often bottle things up because I cannot trust that people really care. Sometimes the feelings I have are too heavy and can be used against me. Story 52. When people asked, I used to lie and say that I was good, but it was usually a casual question that really meant hello. Now, when I'm asked, I am either doing well or I say, "Not great, but I have been worse." I find there is a universal truth in that, and it doesn't create a wall of awkward negativity. Story 53. Because I don't want to worry people. Because I don't want to be mocked for being concerned about things. Because I have done it for years, and it's basically all I have known and done. Story 54. I don't. Human beings experience a wide range of emotions. Simply verbalizing them helps us understand and label them, which makes processing them easier. So even if it isn't heard, I did my part and said it. Of course, it really threw off the cashier at the store I went into. Not really thinking about the interaction as I walked in, I answered honestly when he asked how I was doing. I'm trying to think of reasons not to harm myself. Story 55. Because people often prioritize themselves in conversations, I end up providing support instead of receiving it. Story 56. I don't know how to explain what's going on. I'm just sad and I have no reason to be. How do you explain that? Saying I'm fine is just easier. Story 57. I stopped saying I'm fine. I literally tell people how I feel. It gets rid of them quicker. Nothing is worse than someone telling you what's wrong with you. Story 58. Because no one really cares if I'm not fine or needs to hear it. What are they going to do? If I'm not fine, it's a personal issue I need to address. Story 59. I don't want to burden others and I don't really want to talk about it at that moment. I'm scared of opening up something I can't set aside, especially in a situation where it's not appropriate. Story 60. Because generally, it's not just one thing that is bothering me, and I would sound insane if I had to explain it all. Hey honey, are you okay? No, my feet are cold. My pants are too tight. My shirt tag is bothering me. The weather is changing so my bones feel uncomfortable. I've only gotten 3 hours of sleep each night for the past 2 weeks. I'm bloated because I'll be starting my period soon. I want Texas Roadhouse rolls, a smoothie, and some ice cream, but the closest ice cream shop is an hour away. I want to get a new book, but I have 5 on my shelf that I haven't read yet. I want my dog to snuggle with me but not nose me because the runny nose bothers me. The noise around me is too loud right now, and I have a horrible earworm that I can't get out of my head. Since the noise is so loud, I don't feel like I can turn on the radio because that will make things louder, and I might cry if anyone else or anything adds more sensory input to my surroundings. I have to go to the bathroom, but the toilet is too high for my short legs. I also need to do all the chores and cook a meal, but at this point, I would rather starve than do it, and my hair is touching me. I have an itchy spot that I can't reach. I can keep going, but instead, I just say, I'm fine. Story 61. Because explaining it feels exhausting, and I don't want to seem dramatic. I'm fine is just easier to say when I don't have the energy to unpack everything. Story 62. Because the moment I say I'm not fine, I somehow end up comforting you. Turns into, no, it's not your fault. No, I'm not mad at you. Well, don't feel bad. I'm sorry you're upset now. Of course, I still love you. I didn't mean to worry you. And eventually, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's just easier to say I'm fine from the start. Story 63. Because no one we are associated with usually wants to hear about our personal struggles. And after receiving a certain number of platitudes, we tend to shift to simpler topics that do not make the conversation awkward. Story 64. When people ask me how I am, I don't respond with fine or good anymore. I cringe at that answer because I rarely feel that way. I say things like, I'm alive, I'm here, or I'm still breathing. It helps me avoid gritting my teeth while not revealing too much about what I'm really feeling inside. Story 65. My family has told me directly that if it relates to my medical issues or my divorce, they simply do not want to know. Story 66. Because, how are you, is a polite greeting and not an actual question. No one cares how you are doing, and no one wants to hear your problems. Saying anything that indicates you aren't fine just makes the situation awkward. Story 67. There are several reasons. My family is tighter on money than I am. Hearing about my problems stemming from being in a better financial situation than they are will just come across as my diamond shoes are too tight. Story 68. Because I usually don't feel like having the conversation to explain why I'm not fine if I'm really not. It's just easier to say I am. Story 69. Saying otherwise creates a burden for the person who asked. They now have to be the comforter or the problem solver. Nobody really wants a negative answer. How are you? Is just small talk. Here's another perspective that is particularly applicable for children who are not thriving. If you believe I'm doing fine, then I'm going to let you believe that because I prefer your version of reality over mine. Additionally, if you become concerned, then you become intrusive. Story 70. I'm not going to punish someone politely engaging in social niceties with a trauma dump. Strangers from the internet, on the other hand. Story 71. Sometimes it is not useful or productive for people to know that I am not fine. At work, I do not want my coworkers to know when I am not fine. Story 72. Nobody will say what I need them to say. I might as well keep quiet to save myself the frustration. Story 73. It depends. I would like to be able to sit with my emotions and feel them, trying to solve them myself rather than dumping them on another person. When I'm ready, we can talk about it, but this really depends on how close the relationship is. Story 74. Conditioning makes me scared. I often reply fine or okay to that question automatically, much like saying hi when someone greets you. I fear a few potential outcomes if I don't. I tend to cry when I think or talk about my feelings on anything deeper than a surface level. I dislike crying, especially in front of others, particularly when I struggle to explain what's bothering me or feel I am overreacting. I will hide my tears if I think I might be overreacting or if I cannot explain why I am crying. I do not like to cry, even when alone, and usually, I find something to distract myself if it happens. I do not want anyone judging me for how I am handling a problem or how I plan to address it. I don't want anyone trying to take over and tell me how to solve an issue. I struggle with pushing back or arguing with someone who attempts to do this, especially if I cannot articulate why I disagree or worry they won't approve of my reasons. I generally want a quiet life with as little conflict as possible. Story 75. Usually, I hesitate to share because I don't want to burden the other person or I am afraid of their reaction. I worry that I will overshare, start rambling, or say things in the heat of the moment that I don't mean, at least not then or in that way. Often, I don't know how to explain why I'm not feeling fine, making it difficult to respond to questions I'm unsure about. Story 76. Because people often jump into solution-making mode rather than listening, and more often than not, I wasn't looking for help, just an outlet. However, their help tends to irritate me or stress me out more than simply avoiding that conversation altogether. Story 77. Because people asking, "How are you?" rarely truly want the answer. By the time they ask, answering with "I'm fine" is a courtesy. Story 78. Sometimes I'm just trying to sort through my thoughts. I will talk to my friends or others once I have sorted it out. Usually, when people ask, they don't really want to know. Story 79. To avoid conflict, I only share negative emotions with people who are close to me because I trust them. Story 80. Every time someone asks me that question, it feels disingenuous. No one truly cares about how I'm feeling, so it's not worth discussing. Story 81. Because the last time I didn't say I was fine, I was ostracized by my entire circle of friends. Now I have none, and at 40, it's hard to make new friends. If I don't say "I'm fine" to a significant other, I have learned through experience that it will be used against me in the worst way and never forgotten. Story 82. I have a lot going on, and nobody really wants to hear about it. There is nothing they can do to help, so it is best to simply say, "I'm fine," to make it easier for everyone. Story 83. Mental illness and undiagnosed health issues mean I am not fine most of the time. Something is always happening, even if it seems small to others. It can feel significant to me. I either know it is something others might not understand, or I avoid discussing it because the conversation becomes awkward and uncomfortable. Story 84. They are not asking because they care. They are asking because it is the social norm. It is better to not dampen the mood. Story 85. Opening up to someone makes me feel like I am overwhelming them with my problems, making it their issue and forcing them to either give advice, solutions, empathy, or just waste their time. The only person I can truly open up to is my partner. However, when my tears and daily struggles become burdensome to them, I shut down and try my best not to talk about myself or my life. Sometimes I slip up and vent randomly, then feel foolish because I put them in a position where they have to listen or it seems like they are being unsupportive. If they do not reply, I feel really upset with myself for being vulnerable, thinking I had a safe space. I would rather hold back and suppress my feelings than explain how I feel. Most of the time, I believe I am wrong for feeling my emotions. At least that is what I have been told. But yes, I am fine. Storia 86. Forse è perché a volte preferisco non far pesare gli altri con le mie difficoltà. O forse è che, a volte, ci piace nascondere la nostra vulnerabilità dietro una facciata di forza. È un modo per proteggere me stessa. Ma ogni tanto c'è qualcuno che riesce a vedere oltre. Story 87. because it does not seem worth engaging with the person who is asking. It could be that I do not want to bother them, that I know they will not understand, or that I realize the issue is minor compared to what they are thinking about, and I do not want to take up space. It could also be that I want to feel fine at that moment, and bringing up the issue will take me in the opposite direction. There may be many reasons, but generally, having that conversation is not worth the implications in that context. Story 88. Because it's mostly coworker conversations and half of them are indifferent, it's just polite. I understand that. They don't need to hear about my concerns for the day, and I don't want to share them with most of them. Story 89. Because really, what can someone do about it most of the time? Often, even if they do care deeply, there is not a simple solution that anyone can provide to you. Story 90. Because I know people aren't really interested in listening to what is going on with me or can't always relate. So there is no sense in starting a conversation that isn't going very far. Story 91. I guess it's because I am quite passive and don't fuss about much, or I don't actually have a good sense of being fine. Story 92. Most people I find who ask, "How are you doing?" don't actually care about the answer and are just following standard American greeting protocols. Story 93. I don't do that anymore. Authenticity is important to me. Sometimes, if it's someone I don't know asking, I'll say I'm okay, but I don't say I'm good when I'm not anymore. Story 94. Sometimes people ask how I am. I say I am fine, thank you. Then I walk away and my eyes fill with tears. Story 95. I do this because I do not want to burden others with my concerns. Everyone is dealing with their own challenges. Story 96. Because generally, people don't actually care whether you're okay or not when they say, "Hi, how are you?" They don't expect you to say anything other than good or okay. Story 97. I feel unable to explain why I'm not fine, and I don't see a solution becoming apparent. Therefore, I won't contribute to the conversation by bringing it up, as it would only be seeking sympathy. Story 98. People stop responding when I tell them the truth. It is quite depressing, both the truth and their reactions. No one likes you when you are chronically ill. Story 99. Because it would be considered socially unacceptable to randomly share my traumatic experiences with this Walmart cashier who asked how my day was. Story 100. Usually, when people ask how I am doing, the real answer is that I am not doing well. However, I can't say that because I don't have a good reason for my feelings. If I say, "I am not doing well," they often ask, "Why? What's wrong?" And I have to respond, "I don't know, everything." Instead, when people ask how I am doing, I just say, "I am doing great." Story 101. Because in most cases, I either do not trust someone with my problem or know they will not really care or might gossip. Story 102. Being positive and believing not only that you are fine but that you are the best has been proven to improve your chances of success. This mindset is why great athletes often tell themselves they are the best. And sometimes this is captured on camera in interviews or even before they take a shot. I enjoy football, and this is a common theme with exceptional players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Mohamed Salah, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Similarly, this attitude is linked to the success of narcissists. They believe they are better than most people, and the interesting aspect is that it acts like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They tend to do very well in various professions such as medicine, engineering, and politics. Story 103. I come from a household where my dad scolds me for even the tiniest mistakes, and my mom says things like, "You shouldn't be crying. You're 29 years old, and that's not how it works in the real world," along with comments similar to "just be happy." Others have it worse. My mom is an amazing person, but neither of my parents is very supportive when it comes to mental health issues. I sometimes wonder if they even believe in them. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.